I think we just heard a bell.
Okay, I'll turn my mute up.
All right, everybody. I'm going to start a little bit earlier than late, as we usually do. So let's get started. For guests and visitors, my name is, still says Teresa Russell up here. It's Steve Fairley this time.
Right here.
Club president. And I'd like to welcome you all to the 42nd meeting of the 47th year of the Dublin Worthington Rotary Club. Today's invocation and pledge of allegiance will be offered by the Barnhart.
Let us pray. During these turbulent times in all of our lives, the lingering effects of COVID, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the exploding prices of everything, resulting in inflation and many other items. But let us pause and give praise to our Creator for the gifts that we do experience: freedom, opportunities, families. Thank you for the food served here today and for those who prepared it. Be with all Rotarians worldwide as we seek shelter, safety, and freedom for all on earth. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands,
With liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. President-elect Teresa, would you please introduce any visiting Rotarians and guests?
We have quite a few in the room. Some are part of the program and will be introduced later. Jim Farmer, you have a guest today.
Yes, I'd like to introduce to you Rick Green. I've known Rick since 1988 when I joined Gordon. The last 25 years he's been out practicing on his own with corporate insurance.
Welcome, Rick Green.
Thank you.
I will start with Chrissy Scott. Chrissy's a good friend of mine and had been a Rotary member pre-pandemic. I can't remember exactly when, but she came back to visit us today. I have with me that Trent brought two of our great administrators from Worthington Schools. I have Toya Spencer, who is our DEI coordinator. Our assistant superintendent. And on Zoom, two of our school board members have joined us. I see Charlie Wilson and Kelly Davis have joined us via Zoom. So thank you to both of you.
Scott Lawrence joining us today on Zoom.
Proposed member
Proposed
considering
Zoom
member.
member.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, but you can just come right back here. You are the sergeant.
I am. The wallet's out. We got fines coming. And should have happy dollars.
Win, yes.
We have announcements.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Oh,
Any happy dollars in the room? Done.
I'll do a happy dollar and a fine because I wear shorts.
Oh, okay, very good.
Happy dollars because we finally have weather that's warm enough that I can wear my short sleeve Rotary shirt comfortably in outdoors as well as in. And the other dollar is a fine. So you're wearing shorts.
Very good. You want to take that along with you? Oh, thank you. Anybody else have happy dollars? Shirley?
Last May, it's the first time in 16 years been invited to the
Nice. Wow. That's exciting. Anybody else happy dollars? How about on Zoom? Do we have anybody on Zoom that has happy dollars? Tom? That you raising your hand?
Let's see. Yes, I would just mention, we did the Habitat for Humanity wall build. It was on April 30th, actually. And it was just a tremendous success, and I'm so grateful for everyone who helped. We built 65 walls in 3 hours.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Pretty good.
Okay. Is anybody in the audience a receptionist? I think I heard receptionist
I think
somewhere.
Pete's trying to get a.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
Judy and I are wearing, interestingly, Ukraine's colors. And this is Stand with Ukraine. And I find it quite interesting that Rotary colors and the Ukraine flag are exactly the same blue and gold that we wear. These came from our Rotary Club locally, Southside Rotary, where it was a fundraiser where you buy each of the buttons. And we ought to look into that at our club in Dublin, Worthington Rotary. But I'd be glad to give $5 for the dollars, happy dollars.
Thank you. Okay, my next question, do we have anybody in the room that is a receptionist? Nobody. It's National Receptionist Day, so everybody who's not a receptionist, put money in a pot. It's also National Eat Whatever You Want Day, just for a fact. So who's getting ice cream after work? Who has had shrimp to eat this week? Random question. Nobody? It was National Shrimp Day yesterday. You all put money in the pot. And who gave or mailed or sent flowers for Mother's Day? Very good. Everybody else put money in the pot. Thanks.
Okay, first, we'll do announcements. If anybody has announcements, please make your way up here. Hit the line, come on, run.
Okay, I'm announcing that today, following this meeting, the program committee is going to meet at that table over there. And we're going to be setting up the guidelines and the definitions, of how we're going to operate this next year. So in this pre-meeting, for about 30 or so minutes, that's what's going to take place. Please join us if you'd like it. If you have interest in joining the committee. We do want 10 or so people to help on the 52 weeks that we plan our speaking program. Today,
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you.
Afternoon.
Faces. We are having our club memorial golf outing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? It's going to be held June 3rd at Glen Ross Golf Club. Sign-up sheets are on the table. And if you want to sign up today, if not, you can call me, email me. Bring the sheets back again next week. Hopefully we'll get everybody to sign up. We'll have a full group. We usually have about 20 golfers. Thank you.
Ooh. Oh, no. If anybody has 2 AA batteries, I'll pay a high price for them. Yeah, Jerry, where's your bag? He's got everything in that bag. All right, before the batteries run out, I think we should do our special presentation.
You have to speak loud. Yeah, go ahead.
The special presentation is to the Dublin Scholarship awardees this year of the Rotary. Service Above Self Scholarship. The scholarship is offered annually to eligible high school seniors residing in the Dublin School District. One scholarship of $1,000 is awarded to a graduating student from each of the Dublin high schools. In addition to completing an application, each applicant is required to become familiar with Rotary and are asked to write an essay on how they exemplify the Rotary model of service above self. The essay should reflect how their experience in service had improved and affected their life. It is my pleasure. I tell you, this is the second time I've done this, and it is the best thing I've done in Rotary, is to be able to introduce the Rotary Service Above Self Scholarship awardees. And they are awarded the scholarship based on their service to community, service to school, service to family, financial need, and academic achievement. Now, since we don't have a mic, I was going to have them come up and actually share a little bit about their plans. But I want to ask them to be closer to you to share a little bit about their plans instead of coming up here and having a shot like me. So it is my privilege to introduce you to the 2022 Rotary Service Above Self Scholarship recipients. From Kaufman, Matt Johnson. From Jerome, Reagan McCarthy. And from Scioto, Avery Sam. So if you wouldn't mind. You can start?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want us all to stand up here?
Yeah, just be close to the audience.
Hi everyone, my name is Avery Sands. I am a senior at Dublin High School. My plans for next year are to continue my education at Grace College. It's in Indiana. For those of you that don't know, it's about a 3-hour drive. I'm really excited. I've committed to run cross country and track there as well. And I'm planning on pursuing a degree in early childhood education because I'd like to become a teacher. A few other things about me are that, well, over here, this is my parents. This is my mom, Christy, and my dad, Todd. I'm the oldest in my family. I have a younger sister. She is 16 and my younger brother is 10. But as for how I exemplify the motto service above self, I think it ultimately comes down to my joy and my passion for serving others and helping out in my community, my school, and in my family. And so some of the things that I've been actively involved in currently have shown service in are at church. I actively volunteer in the youth ministry. I work with the kindergartners. They're so cute. They're my favorite. We sing Bible songs and we teach them verses, and it's the best. I also volunteer at this running series in how it just started up in the fall. It's called Healthy Kids Running Series, and it's a program all across the country, but different like organizations put it on. So there's one in town. I help out there. The kids get to run, and it's so cool. And I love the interaction with not only the children, but also the parents and parents. So we're, there you go. Something else is that I serve as a student representative on the Superintendent Advisory Committee in Dublin City Schools. And one of the things that we've been working on is our annual dodgeball tournament. So that is this Friday, so like in 2 days, at Dublin Kaufman and stadium at 7 p.m. And we raise funds all year, and especially at the tournament. To go towards an organization. This year we are funding the Nicholas Memorial Foundation, which helps to send veterans on the Columbus Honor Flight, which I will also be serving as a guardian this summer. So it's June 9th. Thank you.
I work with Avery's grandfather, but full disclosure, I was not part of the committee that selected her. And her grandfather every year bought poinsettias from us. So it came full circle.
It's a good thing she's a guest. Otherwise, we'd have to charge her for that advertising.
All right, Regan?
Hello, my name is Regan McCarthy. I'm a senior at Durham High School, and I also enrolled at Full Cycle Center for their art and design program. I've been in that program for about 2 years now, and we also work with Honda State for CCP. That's really fun. I plan to go to Montserrat College of Art in Beverly, Massachusetts to study illustration and business. So I'll be continuing my art education to that as an illustrator. I've been a part of Girl Scouts since I was in first grade, so yes, a while, over a decade now. I've kept with that. I'm still currently a Girl Scout, and I intend to become a life member come September, I believe, when I'm for the past 2 years, I've been elected to be a part of the Delegate Advisory Council, which is a council that talks at the Girl Scout headquarters about things that Girl Scouts in Ohio want, that we want to see happen, we want them to do, yada, yada. But the main thing that we do is we organize the yearly Girl Club, which is a daily, like full day or sometimes 2-day conference for girls in middle school and high school about professional development and personal development. Ours this year was about 2 weeks ago. It's really fun. It went all day. It was held in Zanesville. It was public speaking, self-defense, coding, which was really fun. I've been a part of my church's youth group for a little while. We've done service projects like helping out, cleaning parks, making like blankets for animal shelters, and that's just so cool. Having fun together, hanging out. Another thing that I do is I'm a camp counselor also for Girl Scouts. I do overnight and day camp. So, and last year at my overnight camp, they asked if I wanted to become a lifeguard, so I did. Yeah, they taught me and everything, so it's cool. So now I work as a lifeguard year-round. And I think it's a really rewarding job. I get to work with kids, I get to work with adults, anyone, and I get to help them if they're in trouble, and I just get to have fun. Yeah. Happening at McCarthy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Johnson. I'm a senior from Dublin High School. I'll be attending the Ohio State University this fall with a major in business administration and a minor in musical theater. So that's my mom right there. Her name's Patty. She also goes with me here. So a little bit about me. I've participated in theater at my high school for the past 4 years. I've been in about 12 productions. And so that takes up a lot of my time, but it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy spending time with the club. I also participated in the student council at Kaufman for 4 years, and also Teen Institute, which is a drug and alcohol prevention group. I've also volunteered in my church, the Refining Church of Nazarene in OU. I served on the student leadership team there for 4 years, and we've planned events like service retreats for students to places like Atlanta, Georgia, and Lake Erie, Ohio. I've also served at my grandparents' church called Mays Manor United Methodist in Linden, Ohio, and we have helped distribute fresh produce donated by the Ohio Food Bank to lower income neighbors in the community for about 7 years. We do that on a monthly basis during their food produce month. it Saturday events. So that's a lot of fun. At Ohio State, I also plan to be involved in an Arts Scholars Program, which is a service / arts involvement community, where I hope to participate in events anywhere from dance marathons that help raise money for pediatric cancer to performing small student-run theater productions on campus. So I think that's it. Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative for the scholarship and getting to meet some of you. I hope to carry on the criteria for earning the scholarship, which is to be involved in my community and to impact others through service. So thank you.
Just hand it.
There you go. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Need to get a picture.
Why don't we just get one at the very end of everything? And it's the same. So won't you stand in front of it? 4 weeks.
That's not 4 weeks.
Well, that's good enough.
Good enough.
Good enough. All right, smiles. There we go.
Perfect.
All right, thank you so very much. So now I want to thank you. Again, I want to congratulate the seniors, and I want to thank the parents for getting them here and bringing them up in such a good way. And I want to wish you success, students. I know I don't keep do that, I know you will be successful. But as you live your life of service, think of Rotary, and think of the 1.2 million Rotaries around the world who, for the last 3 decades, are committed to ridding polio in the world. We're that close to doing all the different projects we do. It's an easier way to serve others with a group of 1.2 million. So thank you so very much. We appreciate it. And if you need to leave, I know everyone's busy, you leave now, or you can stay to, you're more than welcome to stay for the whole presentation. And we're having the Worthington superintendent as our speaker. So thank you. Thank everyone. Bye.
Thank Darnell and Jim Miller for all the efforts they've done and the rest of the committee to organize this. It's a very, wonderful thing that our club is doing. And it's a great opportunity for the kids. So thanks to both of them and the rest of the scholarship team.
What's that?
Yeah.
I'm on a Zoom, but I'm muted and people can't see me.
Guess what? Brittany.
There we go. I think we are now ready for our program. Jennifer will introduce.
As you all know, the past few years have been really, really challenging for schools, especially with masking and learning modes. And I'm sure our student visitors here know well the challenges we faced the past couple of years. But something else that's been going on has been a big culture shift in our public schools. And here today to talk about that is our club member and totally amazing superintendent, Trent Bowers.
So, hey guys, it's always nice to be called over this, and that does not happen very often in our job. So I will take that for time to put together.
My job.
Yeah. So the thinking today was you're hearing a lot about public schools in the news. And that's just a major part of the conversation. On any news channel that you turn on right now, you're seeing legislation be introduced both in the state of Ohio and throughout the country. It's just attempting to quell concerns that some have with what's going on in public schools. So we kind of titled this just navigating the culture wars. And I'm going to move back here just so I can see. You have a clicker.
Apparently I'm still on vacation break.
Yeah, it's hard to get president.
There you go.
We appreciate it. So the first thing that comes to my mind is one of the things that I really believe. And it's not necessarily something that I wish was true, but it's something that I believe, which is schools mirror, they reflect the communities in which they sit. And so when you hear about, hey, these are things that are going on in our local public school, what I would really say is these are things that are going on in our community. And our kids come from our community into our local school. And every generation of students brings something different into the schools that's important to them that may be different that my generation brought forward or that some of your generation brought forward. And oftentimes that's uncomfortable for some of us. But kids come into school and they mirror, they bring with them all the things that are part of their culture and part of their community. So we mirror that, right? And most of what I think you hear about schools is rarely schools doing something that impacts community. I sometimes wish we had greater impact on those things, but I don't think that's often the case. I think it's the opposite. I think school districts mirror the community in which they sit. And so we're super lucky with it, right? People consider Worthington schools or Dublin schools to be really good school districts. I think that's true, but I think it's mostly true because we sit in really strong communities that provide lots of support to our schools. So Worthington is a school district that we would say we're deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of there's lots of reasons for that, but one of the things that you need to know, and I think you know this from previous presentations, is 32% of our Worthington students are students of color, right? So for some of us, that wasn't the case 20 years ago or 30 years ago in Worthington schools. And I think if I'm talking to Dublin folks, that's very similar to Dublin. Dublin is also a very diverse public school district today. 1,500 of our Worthington students, there are about 10,600 students right now. 1,500 of those Worthington students, English is not their first language, right? So a significant number of our students are either students of color or they're coming from homes that aren't English-speaking homes as their first language. Now, many of them speak tremendous English or tremendous students add incredible value, but there's way more diversity in our communities around the 270 outer belt than there ever was previously. That's part of our world. So that's part of what is in our public schools. And there's a richness to that. There's a real, when I think about my own kids, there's an incredible richness to learning about other cultures, other people, other thought processes. But I try to remind people it's often messy, right? So we can really appreciate our diversity. But sometimes we think it's going to be easy, but sometimes because we're thinking about things differently, culture to culture or person to person, it creates a friction. And think about in our schools are pretty small spaces. So a high school is maybe 1,700 students with a 7-foot roof, all walking in a tight space, coming from all different perspectives. That's just part of how we go. So in Worthington, Toya has taught me this. So Toya is our director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's introduced as one of our guests. And one of the things that Toya would say, and we value it incredibly in Worthington, although I don't think we've used these terms previously, but we want every student and family to know that we see them and that we value them. Now that's a challenge, right? It's a challenge when you have this many different perspectives. But we want to make sure that when you say, hey, no matter where you're from or who you are or what your income is, we see you and you're important to us in our public school district. We see you and we value you. And then, you heard from our Dublin students here today, but our young people, our high school students, guys, they're amazing, right? Never believe that our high school students today are whatever you might hear. that they're achieving at a level, the schoolwork that they do is at a level that just blows away my generation and their ideas for what they want to do. So we say that they're bright, inquisitive, and eager to learn. And they're learning about, not only just our subject matter, but they're really interested in the world around them and their voice and place in it. So as a school district, this second part, the last part, we want our students, when they walk into our schools, to be able to grow and learn without fear of asking difficult questions, having uncomfortable conversations, or simply being themselves. And we want them to be comfortable with those things. Now, we're not always, there, because of that diversity, some of when we say we want students to allow them to be themselves is different than how previous generations felt like what it meant to be yourself. So I think that creates some conflict. So we've seen legislation in Ohio. There's a House Bill 616, 322, 327. And frankly, I kind of forget which one's which at this point, but they're all put forward as parental choice ideas. And I just want to say in Worthington, we oppose this legislation. It's not legislation that we believe is needed, and we actually think it could do harm. So these bills seek to place restrictions on school systems regarding what and how educators are permitted to teach about certain topics. Okay? And so typically this is about race, and typically this is about LGBTQ issues. Those are the things that we're seeking to legislate. And so we believe there's some misperceptions. We think there's a misperception in how sexual orientation, gender identity, and theories of racism are built into our state and local curriculum. If you evaluate our state and local curriculum, which is all public, it's all transparent, you can spend as much time digging into it as you want, you're just not going to see that those issues are actually baked into the curriculum. They're just not there. The second thing is there's a concern about textbooks and materials, right? And so how are those same issues in our textbook and materials? And so we would say that we have local processes in place for how we adopt curriculum, how the public can view that curriculum before we adopt it, how anybody can request to see it at any time. We think those things are already in place, and therefore we don't think we need statewide legislation on something like that. We think a local community can work through that in a way that makes sense. And then obviously we think the greatest misperception, and this one truthfully I take offense to, is that our classrooms are being used as places for influencing and indoctrinating students. Like, that's just not what our teachers get into the business to do. Now I will say this, we have 1,325 educators in Worthington. There's probably 1,800 or 2,000 educators in Dublin schools. They do all bring themselves with them. And so as conversations occur, obviously, I have no idea what a high school teacher today is saying to Worthington schools. So if we parse out everything they say, I guarantee you'll find something that you'll take offense to. And so will I, right? Because the classroom is 2,000 interactions that happen 8 times a day, 177 times a year. So there are obviously going to be things that we both go, what did you say, right? And we try to work through that, we try to correct that. But there is just no overall indoctrination that's trying to happen in public schools. Now, culture has shifted. And so our students view things that, differently, or many of our students view things differently than they used to. And so our goal as a public school district is to help them, make them feel comfortable. We want them to come to school and feel comfortable with themselves. That can be a challenge. So in Worthington, right, I really think that this community values a safe, inclusive environment so that our staff can meet the needs of all students every day. And we think that potentially, if bills such as this go forward, it creates a fear-based issue with our teachers. It doesn't allow them to respond to students. It makes them nervous to answer student questions. It doesn't allow them to help every student feel safe and be themselves in our public schools. So there's a concern there. Now, but what are we doing, right? So we are working with all of our staff, 98% of Worthington staff members have gone through training to evaluate their own bias, right? And so we call this implicit bias. That's become controversial throughout the United States. What I tell you is, as someone who's gone through that training, it's really valuable because we all come and look at things through our own eyes. In a different generation, we might have said we look at things through our own lens, but it does impact how we think about things. Understanding how I look at things matters if I'm going to help somebody else. It doesn't mean how I'm looking at it is necessarily wrong, but being able to evaluate how I look at things really matters. So 98% of our teachers have done that. We are reviewing our books so that students see themselves and their families reflected. As if 32% of our students are students of color, they should read some books where the main character is a student of color. We want that, right? I want that for my nephew who's a student of color. I don't want every book that he looks at only to see people that don't look like him in the text. I don't know why anybody would want that. That becomes a somewhat controversial issue. So we are absolutely reviewing our books so that our students see themselves and their families reflected. And then we're working to better understand cultural norms, right? So I mean, just cultural norms overall, and this club has always had an international focus, so we understand how those things are different. But we're working to recognize all sorts of different holidays that honestly 5 years ago, I wasn't even sure existed. But when a student comes into our school, we want them to know they matter, which means we want them to know their holiday matters. Now that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to give the day off, right? So that's like this tough tension and this tough conversation. Right. Now the other thing I would say is, so we've defined diversity, right? Diversity in Worthington means that we want to see every kid, see every staff member, and create a space where everyone feels valued, seen, and heard. That's our goal. We're not there. And we're not there on either side. Because what happens is we have obviously students and families that feel really strong on both sides of the issue. And so today in Worthington, it's probably safer to share more progressive views than it is to share more conservative views. And we want to make it safe for everyone. Will we ever totally get there? I don't think so, right? Because things will continue to change, things will continue to shift. But many of the things that I hear about on the news, right? I hear about critical race theory. As I'm the superintendent, I can't even really tell you what that is. Like I've heard the term, I've read about it multiple times. I know it's an academic theory taught in law school. What I'll tell you is most of the people we employ couldn't teach it if they meant to, right? And I don't mean that as a negative. I just mean like it's more of a high level talking point than it is a real concern. We are talking about race. You may agree with that or disagree with that. I personally agree with that. There are things in race that we need to tackle. Our kids want to tackle it. They are much more active in this conversation than my generation was, right? But when you hear critical race theory, what does that even mean? And in most cases, we don't know what it means, but it's a high level talking point. The other thing is, we hear lots of conversations around, gender identity. How do you feel about gender identity? And what we say is, it's not up to us how we feel. It's up to a family and their child. But what we want to do is create a safe space for that child when they come into our school, or that student, or that young adult. They're not all children. And so that's shifted dramatically over the last few years. But I don't have concerns about that. As a dad of daughters in our school, guys, in Worthington schools, we allow our students to go to the restroom that they identify with, which means if they identify as a different sex than their own biological sex, they go to that restroom. We don't talk a lot about that publicly. It creates a level of public controversy. We've been doing it for the last 6 or 7 years. It hasn't hurt, right? And it helps a subset of our students. Now, that's just the way the world's shifted. That's where it's gone. Do we all understand all those things? No, not necessarily. We might not. But what I'll say is, it's not as scary in practice, and it's not scary for our kids. So that's what we do, because we want to be a welcoming place for all of our students and all of our families. So many of the things that we read about, I think culture shifted, without question. Culture has shifted as we really try to dig into how do we make sure that that a diverse public school district functions well for everybody, not just a subset. Obviously, how our students think, or how many of our students, or how society thinks around issues around LGBTQ is different than it was 20 years ago. And that's creating some culture clash. But as a district, we just want to make sure everybody feels seen, heard, valued, right? And that may, be different for everybody. And I do just want to acknowledge, we're not there. We're not there on either side. On either side. That's our goal, and that's what we're striving for. And we don't think legislation is helpful. Just don't. Right? We're a local control school district, we're a local control state. Most of these things can be dealt with at a local level. But they're obviously kind of the controversy of the day. Last thing I just want to say, because I was out of order here, but there's a lot of conversation about banning books, right? And it's funny, because I just thought that those are conversations that we heard about years ago. I just would have never thought that conversation came up again. My take on banning books is, I give my kids a smartphone. They have every good and every bad thing at their disposal all the time. All the time. So there's no book that I could ban that would stop them from finding whatever they want at any time. So we could have conversation around, is this an appropriate book for a teacher to read? The conversations that we have at Worthington around that are, okay, a teacher at an elementary level reads a book to the class, and that book has 2 moms or 2 dads. And what I would say is, I personally think that's appropriate, because we have many kids sitting in that class who have 2 moms or 2 dads, and they should see themselves reflected. Obviously, others might say that's not appropriate. It's not what a traditional family looks like, and I don't want my 2nd grader to be exposed to that. My personal feeling is we're all going to be exposed to all sorts of things, and we have to work through those things out through conversation with the family. But I understand why that's a shift and why that creates a level of concern. So we are having these conversations where boards of education are saying, hey, we're not, this book, can't be read in Buckeye Valley schools or wherever. Okay, don't give your kids the internet. Seriously, because, So anyway, with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Because we're all navigating this new world, and this is the, kind of the height of politics today is this identity politics that's impacting public schools at a pretty high level. What I'd say is I don't really feel like it's impacted Worthington schools as much as it has some of the surrounding communities around us. But I think so I'm a high school parent, I think like every generation of high school parents, there's a level of uncomfortableness about how the world is shifting, even if we like some of the reasons why it's shifting. So, you want to know? Yes, sir.
I know from conversations with teachers, they seem to be frustrated, and I'm seeing some kind of an exodus tied to that. How are you dealing with the morale and the go get them attitude that a teacher needs to have? And discipline is one of the things they say. I can't discipline. I got my hands tied. Would be an example.
Yeah, so I don't know that teachers' hands are tied with discipline any more than they have been. What I would say is the pandemic has been really, really, really hard. And we are seeing more student discipline issues, especially at the elementary and middle school level than we ever have before. And so we talk about the fact that 18 months where students were in school, out of school, and the issues that they dealt with really set back student maturity and their understanding of how to interact with each other. And it set them back way more than I ever thought was possible. Now, it didn't really set their academics back anywhere near as much as it did their ability to interact and go to school and deal well with others. So schools across the country are seeing that change, right? I don't think we've experienced anything in Worthington that hasn't been experienced in other schools and schools around Central Ohio. So it's a hard time for a teacher that way. We're seeing more of those issues. When I'm talking to teachers right now, what I'm saying is this has been an incredibly difficult year. but I really do have hope for the future. I feel like this year of being together, as difficult as it was, every day our kids have learned again, gained a little more social maturity, learned a little more how to deal back with each other, created more academic stamina. But the pandemic's been tough. And even like on an academic level or even at a college level, our kids kind of felt like everything was optional, right? It's optional to come to class. Maybe I'll just jump on the Zoom. Maybe I'll turn this in. Maybe it's not really. So like we really gave so much flexibility, which I think made sense at the time, that they're having trouble coming back into a more rigid system of responsibility and what time looks like. So teachers are struggling that way. I hope it's temporary, right? I hope it's temporary, but I don't know that from a discipline standpoint, like from a how we discipline students, that has changed significantly in the last couple of years. But I will say this, parents have changed. I mean, and we've talked about this for 15 years, but I grew up at a time where if the teacher said something, I was in trouble. My parents never questioned the teacher. I was guilty. It really didn't matter my side of the story. And that's totally flipped. Almost, parents are advocating for their child above this teacher at an incredibly high level. That has impact on staff. So we're still lucky in Worthington. I think Columbus as a region, we're really lucky for teachers.
How do you make decisions on where to draw the line with regards to what everybody feels like they are in an environment that looks like them? There are kids identifying as animals, and they want certain things to be provided for them that I think are outrageous. How do you make decisions on where to draw that line?
I usually just punt it to Angie, our assistant superintendent. Hey, Angie, can you handle this one? That's actually kind of true. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't think that we have a rubric.
What was the question?
Teresa asked John if how we dealt with it. She said in another school district, students are identifying as animals and they want special accommodations because that's how they're identifying. And she just said, how do you make decisions on making everybody feel valued, seen and heard, but also where's the line? And I don't know that we figured that out, to be honest with you, right? I mean, I think, we want to have conversations with families, we want to have conversations and see what, where their comfort level is. We have, today's the 11th, tomorrow, I think we'll have a student protest at Thomas Worthington. A group of students wants to protest potential Roe versus Wade change, right? And so the way we help handle student protest is we try to provide students a safe way to protest and express themselves, but also put some guidelines on that, right? Like, here's kind of how much time that can be, here's kind of where it can be, and now it's time to go back to class. But I don't know that, like, I don't have a guidebook that says a protest can be 24 minutes, and this is what you're allowed to protest, and this is what you're not. So we're definitely struggling with how do we navigate that piece. So we're kind of taking what you just described on a case-by-case basis. But it's challenging us, for sure.
I first commend your openness and directness about legislation that's taken care of courage to come forward. But one of the things that I see driving a lot of problems at this point, tremendous increase in anxiety and depression among our young people. Large percentage, much more than it had been prior, let's say, 7%. How do you see that?
So on the Zoom, by the way, Jim just asked, he said he feels like there's a significant increase in student anxiety and depression, and how do we handle that? And that's absolutely true. And so the data would show that nationwide, this is a generation that's really struggling with anxiety and depression. And putting an understanding on why is a hard question, right? So I know you didn't ask why, they tie it to smartphone usage and kind of the comparisons that we enjoy when you look at social media and being connected all the time and never being able to put a device away. I don't know if I've said this to you guys, but I'm often yelling at my own daughters, throw your phone away and go watch TV. Like I'm asking them to watch TV just so that they stop like clicking on the Snapchat button, right? Because it never stops. That response never stops. And so we used to be able to disconnect. So that's there. We've invested a lot in mental health resources. We've added 11 mental health specialists to Worthington schools over the last couple of years. It's not enough, but I don't know that there's ever going to be enough in this piece. And then the pandemic just caused a whole level of trauma that added on to that, right? And so I think the challenge now is, so we have this mental health crisis in America that was coming, that probably was already here pre-pandemic. Then we just lived through something that nobody's in our generation has lived through before and caused a level of student trauma. And now we're trying to get back on the horse and trying to figure out when can you push and when shouldn't you? And I think that becomes really difficult in a public setting because it's probably a different answer for every single child in the school district. So, student mental health, specific student challenges just continue to be part of this equation. And then, we always say like part of the pandemic is kids, again, reflect what's going on in their families. So we have a lot of families that really struggled through this pandemic, whether they were impacted by COVID or whether they were impacted by this anxiety around COVID. So we see that students come to school with that. I actually think that's part of the behavior. Like all these things are tied together because when students are struggling, then they don't know how to express themselves, and then they express themselves with negative behaviors, and all these things kind of tie together. So we're investing heavily in that area. It's a focus of ours. I don't know where the future goes on that. But we have, I think that's part of people's concern. I think it ties into this a little, although tangentially. I think there's a feel of, hey, you guys aren't focusing on academics, right? And I think there's some truth to that. Like there was a time where that was our number one priority. And then because of shifts in society and because of shifts in how kids are viewing mental health and other things, as a school district, we've tried to wrap our arms around that and figure like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've got to help this before we're ever going to get to a higher level of academics. But again, I do think sometimes pendulums swing to get out of balance. So, I'm beginning to feel like, yeah, we may be out of balance on this side, we need to swing back to that middle piece. But COVID's challenged that and trying to figure out when is that piece. So, well, I've got probably one more question. So, yep.
How do you deal with cell phone usage in the classroom? Do they still use those phones?
Yeah, that's a great question.
How can you learn when they're on their phone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have kind of different policies by grade level right now. So middle school has pretty restrictive policy where cell phones are to stay in your backpack during class, and then there's some zones like hallway class changes or lunchtime where you can have your phone out. High school is currently class by class. So teachers are empowered to tell kids that in my class, you may not have a cell phone out. It needs to be in your backpack, or some teachers have like places where a student can turn their phone in and those types of things. Other teachers have allowed students to utilize cell phones in class or be on their cell phones. And so we're talking about how do we look at high school cell phone policy? Ask our students here what they think, but we're trying to have that conversation. I personally have felt like we've empowered our teachers to make whatever choice they want. Our teachers are saying, hey, we want more consistent policy. And so then I'm saying, well, if we have more consistent policy, you all have to follow it. And you have to model it, right? Because as an adult, you've got to model what you ask of our students. And they're like, well, I don't know if I want to model that. Like, so it is a challenge. We're having a few more issues, and not as many as some schools, but of things like fights in bathrooms. Well, why do you have more fights in bathrooms? Cell phones. Because it's not that kids are accidentally running into each other in a restroom. they're setting up when they're going to get together to have their altercation because they can set it up on a smartphone. And they choose places that are less supervised than other places. So, all these things kind of go together. But it's also putting the genie back in the bottle. We have parents texting their kids all day long, talking with their kids, and sometimes for good reasons, right? Like, hey, I'll bring you this, or I forgot this, or, I'm often like texting my parents who they're back from Florida now, but they're often in Florida, and my dad will text my kids on the group chat at 10 a.m. and I'm like, they're in school. Yeah. And my kids are like texting back, and then they're going back and forth, and grandma jumps in. Yeah, so right, I mean, it's the challenge of our era. Technology is the challenge in every part of what we're talking about. It's part of the challenge in these culture conversations, right? Of rumors and pieces that spread on the internet. It's part of the challenge with student anxiety and depression. We're all just trying to figure out how do we navigate these tools we have. They are amazing, and yet they can cause great harm. And, it would be fascinating 15 years from now to look back and say, we're doing this right. Holy cow, what were we doing on this? I'm not sure.
Hey, Trent,
Yeah.
could I just ask a question on behalf of the Zoom gallery? Well, on behalf of me, who sits in the Zoom gallery.
Come back to Rotary.
So
I have the mic.
He's asking the questions.
Go ahead, John, sorry.
Sorry. So what are your, like OSBA and other educational associations telling you that they think is going to happen in the legislature and the General Assembly that might affect a community like us where our values may not be in sync with legislation that the General Assembly might pass?
I think there's a good chance that some of the legislation that we would not be in favor of will pass based on the current makeup of our legislature. So there's no question that I sit as the vice chair of a group called the Alliance for High Quality Education. It's a group of suburban school districts that lobbies in the state. And so our current philosophy is to try to make the bills less damaging, but recognizing that based on the current makeup of the state house, there's a good chance that something passes. Politically, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. So. All right, I'll get out of your way. Thank you guys.
School district and to our club and to the Worthington community. We just really appreciate everything you do. Really tough job. All right, before we wrap up, we have a raffle. How much, Shirley? $16. $0629. Uh-oh. Every week I question if this raffle passes. There's always something. Ace of spades up at the table. 0631. $184. Adrienne, come on up.
That's it, right there. You got it.
Five of spades. Everybody, we're a little past, we'll go right to the four-way test. As soon as I find it here on the computer. Zoom folks out.
Yeah, but can they see that from the camera? From the hour?
There we go.
No, they won't be able to.
Okay.
All right, other things we think, say, and do. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it very long term?
Third, will better friendships. And fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. We are adjourned.